All right, y'all, so the last thing I want to show you is how to take some little bits of our episode and use a couple little tools that Premiere Pro offers in order to up the production value quite a bit just by doing a few simple things. So I want to show you, like earlier, we had all these tick marks throughout the episode that just marked points of interest, like something a little funny that happened that could be used as an Instagram clip, or a few different clips that could be mashed together for a whole little highlight segment, or a story he told, or anything like that. So what I usually do is using the in and outs like we were using earlier, go through and look at each tick mark and kind of decide which of them I do want to pull, and I'll just select the in, select the out. I've already got a little clip. It's hard to see because of how long the episode is, but I have a little clip selected in here that I've already drag and drop. I'll add them down here to this new item to make a sequence out of it, and then I'll just collect a bunch of these little, I name them the episode number, clip number, such and such, vertical or horizontal, based on what I'm using the clip for. Vertical if it's for something like an Instagram reel or story or TikTok or something. And I also make this sequence that I just call episode 126 highlights, and this is just where I dump like all the little clips, and then I can more easily see them and look through them and zoom in and cut parts and decide if I even want to use them at all. And this is actually a good way sometimes I like to do like mash up little montage highlights for Instagram, just to kind of give a rapid fire moment by moment clips from the episode. But what I want to show you today is the one clip I've highlighted here is something I know I want to use as a vertically oriented highlight clip. So whenever I've got the in and out selected, I just drag and drop it, and I've got it in here, this vertical sequence. We've got episode 126, clip number 4. This is already oriented vertically, and the way I do this is I have this vertical template that I have in my post-production folder that I talked about earlier in that new episode template. I've got this vertical template that's just a small video file that is already oriented for social media purposes, and I just drag and drop this into my Premiere project, and then I can use that and just copy and paste it a whole bunch of times to make vertical templates. So I did that here, called it episode 126, clip number 4, vertical. So I'll drag and drop that from this editing window into the sequence, and it's going to ask you if you want to merge keep the existing settings from the draft we've selected from, or if I want to keep the existing settings from the sequence. And because this is my template for the vertical sequence and I want to keep it that way, I'm going to put keep existing settings, and that's going to keep it oriented vertically. But what you will notice is the orientation is out of whack because of how the episode was shot. So this is an easy fix. All we have to do is go into the effect controls window, and we can adjust the scale and scale it down so that there's no black bars on the top or bottom. And but we have one more issue, is because of the way the different camera angles are shot, right now it's good on the guest, but once it goes to me and Danny, it's not focused on either one of us. So I'm going to show you how we can use this effect controls window as well as keyframes to adjust that orientation so that it's correct and it looks best for the viewer. So what I'm gonna do first is look through this clip and cut every time the speaker changes. That way when it gets to us, we have this clip that's oriented on the guest and he's front and center, and then when it gets to me and Danny, I can then go in and move the position, and it'll only affect this selected piece of the clip. Move that over because I'm speaking. Move me to the center. There we go. And now what I do want to show you, Danny doesn't talk in this clip, but there are clips where both of us are speaking, and I don't want to necessarily cut. I want to do something a little fancier than just cutting and moving, so it just has that harsh cut from speaker to speaker. So what I can do in this original clip is, I think starting right here, I can cut it, and then let's cut maybe right here. And then in this window, I want it to pan over to Danny and then pan back to me. So what I'm going to do is we're going to use keyframes. So in this effect controls window, you'll see these little stopwatch looking emblems, and it says toggle animation when you hover over it. These are how you apply keyframes to the clip. And this is basically going to mark at the specific frame what orientation and effects are put on the clip and stuff like that. So I can show you what that looks like if we, I'm not going to mess with the scale at all for this clip, but I am going to mess with the position. So now starting here, I'm going to toggle that animation, and the keyframe is going to appear right there at this orientation, 398 and 328 at this point in the sequence. And then if I press spacebar and wait just like a second or two, and then move it a little bit, it's going to get closer to Danny and be at that orientation at that point in the sequence. Then we'll go a little bit more and have it go all the way over to Danny and stop. And then let's cut here, because then I want it to start panning back to me quickly. So now our keyframes are stopped. I'm going to make another one just like we did before, right at this point, at this orientation, 19 and 328, at this point in the sequence. And then we'll move it over a little bit towards me, go a little bit further, spacebar, go a little bit over towards me, spacebar, and then right here, have it pan all the way back over to me and stay that way for the rest of the sequence. Now if we scroll back, or scrub back, we can see this first cut goes straight from him, straight to me, but then whenever it gets to this sequence with the keyframes on it, watch what it does. See how it scrubs to match all of those keyframes positionings at each of those points. But one thing I will point out, if you noticed, whenever it switches clips, it doesn't smoothly, it kind of jumps over to that first keyframe we put in this clip. And that's because that first keyframe positioning is not identical to the ending positioning right here. So to fix that, let's clear the keyframes. Right click this little window, and we can clear all the keyframes so it goes back to a normal position. I'm gonna put this one goes from 19 on the horizontal axis. So I'm gonna untoggle the animation and move this back to 19 so that it's identical to the previous clip. Now what I'm going to do is have this be the first positioning as I toggle on that keyframe. There we go. And then I'll have it slowly inch back over to me and then fully back over to me. Now let's see what that looks like. There we go. Now the last thing I'll show you with keyframes is you can also use this for text and logos and stuff like that. I'm gonna add a piece of text and I'm gonna add a logo. So first, let's make the easy one first. Let's find in my post-production folder my sticker logo for the podcast, and let's insert it in here and extend it for the length of the clip. You'll see we got to adjust the size and positioning. Let's move it down to maybe 3. There we go. Down to the bottom. And this isn't going to look very great for the episode. This isn't something I would normally do, but just for the sake of explanation, I'll show you how to make this throughout the clip, have this logo just kind of ping pong back and forth along the bottom of the frame. If that's a style you think would look cool, this is a way that you can do it. And just knowing these techniques, you can use it in all sorts of different ways. So we're going to do the same thing where I'm going to move the position to the far left to begin, and then we're going to toggle on the keyframe at that very first frame of the sequence, and then press spacebar, stop after a few seconds, and have it pan a little bit over. Stop, pan a little bit over. And you're just kind of going to go through the clip And each time you move that positioning, it's going to add another keyframe at wherever you paused at. There we go. Now if we go back to the beginning, we can see what that animation will look like as it reaches each of these positioning points. You can see it gradually moves positions as it goes through the timeline. And now if we wanted it to move fast, we kind of spaced it out pretty far, but if we wanted it to move even faster, let's clear the key at that original position, but then I want to just start and stop it every second, and I have it move pretty drastically across the screen. And we'll just move it all the way across the screen every second or two. That way there's a whole bunch of keyframes in there. There we go. So now you can see there's a whole bunch of keyframes in that short amount of time, and that emblem is moving far across the screen in that short amount of time. So you can see what that looks like. See how fast it moves? Let's have it move a little bit more to finish out the timeline. There we go. Now let's lock those layers and add some text, and I'll show you some other stuff you can do with keyframes. So we'll click the text tool, type somewhere on the screen, click, and then let's type podcast. And we can double click and select those words, come in here to the effect controls window and click that down arrow so that we can change things like the font, things like that. I really like going up to the top. I really like this font right here. So we'll do that. We'll scroll down and you can see we can put some background. I like to put some shadow. Let's change the positioning so it fits better. Lower it down a little bit. There we go. And we'll extend this across the sequence like that. And now let's do something to this text as the clip goes. Now let's do something to this text as we go through the clip. So I'll show you any of these little toggle animation buttons. We can use these with keyframes. Rotation, we can have this text rotate along the axis. We can have the opacity change up and down. There's a couple of the, there's a lot of features that I don't really know what they do. Like I said, I'm no expert to Premiere Pro. I'm sure this is an industry standard program, so I'm sure there's everything under the sun that you can do with this. These are just a couple of the little ways I know how to use it, and I encourage you to go through and practice, because I only learned this stuff by just fiddling around with it and figuring out what some of these buttons do. And so I can show you how we can toggle the keyframes for opacity, and let's make the podcast word flash every couple seconds. So what I'm going to do is toggle that. Actually, I'm going to go to 0 opacity to begin with, so that it's invisible. Toggle that animation to set the first keyframe. Wait a couple seconds, and then let's make it 50% or close to 50%, so that it's fading in. And then a little bit more, we'll increase it to 100%. A little bit more, decrease it down to 50%. A little bit more, decrease it down to 0%. And I'm trying my best to just eyeball like about equal distance, equal time between these keyframes. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I suppose in certain instances, getting it exactly on the frame you want could be important. But for this case, I just like to eyeball it. We'll go a little bit more, increase it back to 50%, a little more, increase it to 100%, and then down to 50%, and that'll be the end of the clip. So now let's go to the beginning and see what that sticker looks like and what that flashing podcast logo looks like. There we go. And now one more time, I'll show you if we clear these keyframes. Let's make it flash really quickly. So I'm gonna have it go from 0 to 100 every 1 second. So we'll start at 0, have it go to 100, go back to 0, go back to 100, go back to 0. And you see just very rapidly, let's have it change opacity up and down. 0 to 100 throughout the whole clip. There we go. Now let's look at how increasing the number of keyframes and drastically increasing and decreasing the opacity does to the flashing. Now it's quickly flashing. So you see there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do with just these couple of techniques, just knowing how to use keyframes, knowing how to manipulate your sequence and input different tracks. It can really up the production value of your show. And see, this is another vertical clip that I exported, and I added just a couple PNGs and our newest logo, and added some keyframes in it, and this is what it looks like at the end. And I've said this a number of times, but you know, I'm no expert to Adobe Premiere Pro. I just have been doing this podcast with my brother for some years now, and I've found just through trial and error ways to produce a show on your own relatively easily, and how to streamline the process and just make it your own and up that production value, even though you aren't, you know, a master editor or have all these special pieces of equipment or things like that. Just knowing some ins and outs of this program is helpful, and I wish that I had some of these tips as I went into it, so that there was less fiddling and trial and error going on. But I hope you got something out of these tutorials. I really encourage comments. You know, if there's something I'm doing that's horribly wrong or inefficient, please let me know, because I am still learning and I'm not an expert. But or if you just wanted to let me know something that really helped you, or something you never thought of in this program, and using it in the ways that I did. But if you are making a show, God bless you in it. I pray that you have success in it, and hope you got something out of this. You know, maybe down the road you could teach me a thing or two. Feel free to reach out directly to me if you have questions about self-producing a podcast, or things aside from editing in Premiere Pro that you might want help with. I love making videos like this, so I might just make some more in the future. But thank you for taking the time to watch these videos and hear what I have to say. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one.